Class 7 Honeycomb Chapter 5 Quality. Quality is a story of a German shoemaker settled in London. His name was Mr. Gessler. He was a perfect artist. The story tells us about Mr. Gessler's dedication to work. He is a struggling shoemaker but works with passion. The shoes that he makes are masterpieces in themselves. But in the end, the story tells us about the sad loss of art and quality in today's world of mass produced big brands. The story teaches us a lesson, that is, to become a master at any skill, it takes a total effort of your heart, mind, and soul working together in unison. Now, let us discuss about the author of the story, John Galsworthy. John Galsworthy was an English novelist and playwright. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1932. Now, let us move on to the story. Quality. I knew him from the days of my extreme youth because he made my father's boots. He lived with his elder brother in his shop, which was in a small by-street in a fashionable part of London. The author had known the shoemaker, that is, Mr. Gessler, for many years because he used to make boots for the author's father. Mr. Gessler was a shoemaker who lived with his elder brother in London. They had a shop in a fashionable part of London, but it didn't have any signboard other than the name of Gessler Brothers. So that was the name of the shop, that is, Gessler Brothers. Mr. Gessler used to make boots only on orders. Once the author questioned Mr. Gessler if it wasn't awful to make those shoes perfectly fitting into the feet they were meant for, and he answered, "It is an art." Most of the time, Mr. Gessler will be engaged in his boot making art and won't talk much with his customers. And the boots made by Mr. Gessler were of supreme quality and lasted very long. They never failed to fit. Since the boots made by Mr. Gessler lasted for a long period of time, the narrator did not need to go to his shop very often. The customer going to Gessler sat on a wooden chair and waited. It was like going to some church. Once the narrator went to Mr. Gessler's shop because he wanted a pair of Russian leather boots. He entered the shop, sat on the wooden chair there, and waited for Mr. Gessler to come. He could hear some sounds from upstairs. After a few minutes, Mr. Gessler came. The narrator asked him whether he could make a pair of Russian leather boots for him. Without saying a word, Mr. Gessler went into another portion of the shop, and soon he came back with a piece of gold brown leather. Gessler showed his piece of gold brown leather to the narrator and admired it. And Gessler promised to deliver the boots after a fortnight. The boots made by Mr. Gessler were of high quality and lasted very long. But on one occasion, the author had a different experience. Once the narrator complained that his last pair of boots creaked, and Gessler was shocked to hear that. He promised the narrator that he will repair the shoe, and if he couldn't, he will pay the money to the author. On one occasion, while placing an order for a shoe, the author was a bit absent-minded. He went to the Gessler's shop wearing a pair of boots bought from another shop. It was bought in an emergency from a large shop. So Mr. Gessler noticed it immediately and told that those were not his boots. He pressed a finger on the place where the left boot was not comfortable. He spoke bitterly that big firms made poor quality boots. Mr. Gessler then talked about his struggles in his trade. He tells that the customers are always attracted to big firms by their advertisement, not by their work. They make poor quality boots, but they have more customers because of their advertisement. And the good shoemakers like Mr. Gessler are not getting enough customers because of this. Mr. Gessler spoke a lot about the hard times of his trade. His own business was going down. And the author has heard such things for the first time from Mr. Gessler. He felt very bad and ordered many pairs of boots. And those boots lasted for a long period that the narrator was not able to go to him for nearly 2 years.